Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analyses and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. International media kept a close focus on the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk as new details emerged about the suspect now in custody. In Britain, preparations for a Donald Trump state visit, as opinion writers warn the trip could be overshadowed by scandals at home. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Doha is hosting an extraordinary Arab-Islamic summit. Arab outlets have framed the gathering as a historic show of unity, portraying it as both a defense of Qatari sovereignty after Israeli strike and a platform to demand stronger action in support of Palestine. We'll start with the Washington Post, which profiles the suspect in Charlie Kirk's assassination, shedding the light on the complex portrait of Tyler Robinson. According to the report, Utah officials revealed he embraced a leftist ideology and may have been radicalized after leaving college, spending time in online spaces steeped in anger and gaming culture. Investigators found bullet casings engraved with anti-fascist slogans, hinting at the mindset behind the attack. The piece also highlights that while his conservative family expressed shock, Robinson's partner has cooperated with the authorities, saying she was blindsided. Charged with aggravated murder, he could face the death penalty. And the report underscores how a promising student spiraled into extremism and how his killing of Kirk has reignited urgent debates about political violence, polarization, and the risks of radicalization in digital spaces. Alicia Finley's Wall Street Journal column explores the troubling descent of Tyler Robinson, describing him as a gifted student from a stable family. The author explains how Robinson dropped out of college and became immersed in online subcultures, video games, and digital memes that appeared on his ammunition. The article argues that his trajectory reflects a wider crisis among young men, what the author calls America's lost boys, who retreat into virtual worlds instead of building real relationships. Also, she was drawing parallels with other young shooters. Finley highlights how internet addiction, mental health struggles, and cultural isolation can turn loneliness into violence. The piece calls for stronger social structures to re-engage alienated men and prevent similar tragedies. The Economist, on the other hand, examines whether Charlie Kirk's killing signals a surge in radical left violence, finding the data more complex than political rhetoric suggests. Multiple databases show right-wing extremism remains far deadlier in the US than left-wing attacks. The prosecution project's chart highlights that while both sides commit acts of political violence, most recorded incidents lean rightward, as you can see in this chart. Also, Anti-Defamation League adds that 76% of extremist murders in the past decade were tied to the right, though classifications, of course, vary. Another also chart shows the threats and harassment against public officials are soaring, over 9,000 against Congress in 2024, before easing slightly this year. Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project counts 373 politically motivated deaths since 2020, with partisan targeted attacks rising sharply since 2016. Researchers also stress violence remains rare but increasingly symbolic, with many perpetrators using politics as a vehicle for deeper personal crisis. Before moving across the Atlantic to the Middle East, let's have a look at this interesting investigation by the Washington Post into President Trump's month-long crime emergency in Washington, D.C., painting a stark picture of policing under federal control. Reporters estimated more than 1,200 court records, revealing that while crime rates fell, arrests were concentrated in the capital's poorest, predominantly black neighborhoods. The report also highlights that federal officers often stop people for minor infractions, from fare evasion to public drinking, hoping to uncover guns or even drugs. Judges have already dismissed some cases as unconstitutional, raising concerns about radical profiling and heavy-handed tactics. The investigation underscores the divide as supporters call the surge a success, crediting it with reducing homicides and robberies. And critics argue it sacrifices civil rights for optics, leaving communities distrustful of both police and federal power. To the Middle East now, where Arab and Muslim leaders convened in Doha for an extraordinary summit today after Israeli attack on Qatar. Arab media outlets reported on preparations, framing the summit as a historic show of unity after Israel's strike on Doha. Coverage emphasized solidarity, sovereignty, and defiance against what outlets called Israeli state terrorism. Editorials urged real measures, not rhetoric, while highlighting Qatar's vow to continue Gaza mediation. Ghassan Sharbil, the editor-in-chief of Pan-Arab Sharq al-Awsat newspaper, wrote describing Benjamin Netanyahu as the most dangerous leader in Israel's history, surpassing even past hardline prime ministers. Sharbil traces a long record of assassinations, disregard for international law, and relentless pursuit of Palestinian leaders, from the 1997 failed poisoning of Hamas's Khalid Mashal in Jordan to the recent deadly strike in Doha. The article accuses Netanyahu of reveling in destruction, ignoring global condemnation, and destabilizing Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and even Iran. His actions, it argues, are driven by paranoia and a refusal to accept Palestinian existence. The author calls on the Arab-Islamic summit in Doha to use diplomatic and economic leverage, especially via the US, to press for a two-state solution. To the Telegraph, which reported that Britain has barred Israeli students from the Royal College of Defence Studies, a first in the Academy's history. The Minister of Defense said the decision reflects opposition to Israel's military escalation in Gaza, insisting on diplomacy, ceasefire, and humanitarian aid. Israeli Defense Chief Amir Bahram condemned the move as dishonorable and a betrayal of an ally, warning it undermines Britain's own security. The ban follows a series of punitive measures from London, including halting arms exports licenses and signaling support for Palestinian statehood at the UN. Prime Minister Netanyahu branded the UK's actions as shameful, accusing Starmer of emboldening Hamas. The move deepens a widening rift between London and Jerusalem. Ahead of President Trump's state visit to the UK, The Independent published a report describing Prime Minister Keir Starmer as facing a fraught week as Trump's state visit turns into a test over free speech. The report cites Washington sources who confirmed that Trump plans to make the issue a top priority during talks in London, putting trade negotiations and wider international discussions at risk. The row also follows controversial arrests in Britain under the Online Safety Act and growing criticism in the US that the UK is criminalizing speech. The piece highlights also that Starmer's position is further weakened by the sacking of Lord Mendelssohn as ambassador to Washington, leaving his government looking unstable. Yet the report also points out that Trump needs Britain as a reliable ally, suggesting that despite tensions, the special relationship may ultimately deliver economic and political support. The Guardian focused in its analysis on how Donald Trump's state visit to the UK comes at a politically fraught moment for Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The sacking of Lord Mendelssohn over ties to Jeffrey Epstein has left Britain without a US ambassador, just as the White House and Downing Street prepare for high-stakes meetings. The piece contends that while Trump craves royal pageantry and optics, banquets, military displays, and deals on tech and nuclear cooperation, the scandal risks overshadowing the visit. It also quotes analysts who warn Trump could weigh in on Mendelssohn's successor or even free speech controversies after Charlie Kirk's killing, though officials believe he will avoid clashes to preserve his rapport with Britain. The report concludes that for Starmer, the Trump spectacle may offer a much-needed distraction from Labour's internal turmoil. And we'll end with the New York Times report on the 77th Emmy Awards, capturing both the glamour and the tensions shaping Hollywood. The standout victory was HBO's Max surprise hit, The Pitt, which won Best Drama and Acting honors for Noah Wyle and Catherine Lanassa, beating Apple TV's heavily favored Severance. Apple also still triumphed in comedy, while with The Studio, where Seth Rogen dominated the night, while Netflix's Adolescence swept the limited series category. The review also notes the symbolic win of Stephen Colbert's cancelled Late Show, which earned Best Talk Series, and emotional ovations and political undertones punctured the night. Free Palestine pins, also Javier Bardem's Kufia, and also there were boos at public broadcasting cuts, showing, or all of this spectacle shows, how entertainment ceremonies continue to reflect broader cultural divides. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.